Hi, and welcome to Everybody's Business. I'm your host, Valerie Hellerman, and today I have the Friends Committee on National Legislation, the Helena Advocacy team, members of their team here today. Tom Butts, hi Tom.
Hi,
and
Valerie.
Jim Smith.
Hi,
Jim.
Valerie.
So FCNL, just give us a quick summary of what FCNL is, Jim.
Okay, well, FCNL is a sort of a lobbying arm of the Friends, the Quakers, that started in 1943 to influence legislation in the United States around the issues of war. And it started then during World War II to try to influence ways in which the United States has positions on war, since as Quakers, the belief is that there's no reason for war. We're all created equal, and there's no reason to go to war to resolve conflicts or issues. And in 2015, FCNL started local advocacy teams across the United States. There's over 100 of them now in various cities from coast to coast and from north to south. And their role is to influence our elected officials from a local point of view about issues that come up that FCNL thinks is important. And so each year they choose another focal point in terms of an issue. And this year it's no war with Iran, but it's not the only issue, and other things come up. And so what we do is write letters to our congressman, we write letters to the editor, we invite people to have discussions about these issues if they're interested, and to try to show them the kinds of facts and figures. And the reason I was attracted to it is because one of the things that they want you to be involved in this is from the point of view of your own values and your own interest in these kinds of things. And so since my days as a young guy, I was against the war in Vietnam. I'm against war. I don't think you can solve it. I believe in nonviolence. I don't think that you can resolve anything through violence. It just doesn't work. So, besides the morality question, so.
And so Helena joined and formed their Helena Advocacy Group in January of this year. Am I right?
Yes.
And so there's a team of people in Helena who've gone through the FCNL training, and they get weekly and monthly meetings online on Zoom with the FCNL to keep us up to date with congressional issues. And one of the things that we talked about last week that was so wonderful is that the issues that are being voted on are discussed at these meetings, so we can there's really some grassroots advocacy that can happen to influence the vote. So what are some of the issues that are coming up right now? Tom, you're going to talk about one of them.
Well, one of them that's top on the list is the sanctions on Iran. And we're advocating for Congress or for the United States to ease the sanctions on Iran for various humanitarian reasons primarily. There's quite a lot of evidence that our Congress people respond if we write them to a letter or something. They generally say, well, humanitarian aid is already part of it's not covered by sanctions, but we've had information from people in Iran and also from people that are Iranians. Last night we actually even heard on one of these national conferences from an Iranian-American journalist who said that this is really hurting people on the street in Iran, and it's actually giving base, I guess, to the hardliners. They're living off of this better, and they're the ones that actually get some of the stuff. So there's certain there's certain things that are approved, but apparently it's very difficult to get the finances. The U.S. sanctions essentially make it very difficult to get things to Iran. So we're working toward getting Congress to basically ease those sanctions at least through this period with COVID-19.
So one of the things that the World Bank, the European
IMF.
countries, the IMF have been trying to get money for Iran, a loan. Iran is trying to get a loan from the IMF, and the U.S. is blocking that vote, or?
They're trying to block it.
They're trying to block it.
Right. It's the first time Iran has applied for a loan from the IMF since 1960. So it's not something they go to on a regular basis and all of that. And right now in Iran, there's, the latest figures I've been able to see, about 95,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 and approximately 6,000 deaths. So it's way lower than us, but it's a much smaller country. And while they've mismanaged the crisis in their own way also, just as we have, cutting off medical supplies and the kinds of things, everything from the gowns and masks. And
that's part of sanctions.
Right, that's, and it's just, and we know how devastating this can be. I mean, during the Clinton administration, when they had the sanctions against Iraq for a period of a decade, it's well known now from stuff from the United Nations and Amnesty International that over 500,000 children in Iraq died because of the lack of access to medical care that they needed. And so we can assume that those same kind of numbers are happening in Iran now. And so it's, it's a humanitarian and it's a moral issue. And
so this is something that you could write to your congressman about now, if, and we can put up the numbers of our congressmen that you can alert them that you want to lessen the sanctions against Iran. It's really important for this to happen now. And I guess it also is making us look pretty bad in Europe, in the EU. I mean, they're all trying to approve these loans and we're blocking it. So what other action alerts are there right now?
Well, the one that came out this week, one was with stop the militarization of the police in the United States. And, this has been going on for years. Once I forget exactly, I think Tom has the information, but they got a new funding for the military several years ago. We spend such enormous amounts of money. This year's projected is $750 billion.
Do you have a chart, Jim? I think you have a chart about our military spending.
Right. This is a chart of the military spending of 12 countries, the US, China, Russia. And as you can see, we spend more every year than the other countries combined. This includes China, Saudi Arabia, India, France, Russia, the UK, Germany, Japan, and South Korea. So it's pretty amazing that we spend that kind of enormous money. I didn't bring a chart, but I have another chart that's sort of a pie chart that shows the military spending versus like SNAP or food stamps.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all one color, and then there's these little teeny slivers for things like hospitals and medical and CDC, and but anyway, during the last 15, 20 years, a lot of the surplus military equipment has been given to local police stations or police departments and sheriff's departments for free. And so, like we have here in Helena, we have this armored vehicle. I don't know that it's ever been trotted out for any reason, but I know that we have one. And you also see the kind of equipment. I mean, when you look at, we're watching right now protests on TV, and some of the equipment that's being used they don't look like local police departments. These people look like they're in some kind of a Navy SEAL team, with their and heavy armored with BARs, AK-47s being used by police and against U.S. civilians. And then we've recently had this whole idea of calling out the U.S. military against U.S. citizens, which and a lot of legal scholars think is actually unconstitutional.
And FCNL says stand with protesters and stop militarizing law enforcement.
Yes.
So again, now is the time to call your congressman and let them know that you do not, that you stand with the protesters and to stop this militarizing of the law enforcement. What else is on the agenda these days? Tom, you have something you want to talk about?
Sure. This month, Congress will take up the reauthorization and funding of the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA.
What is that exactly?
Basically, that was a good question. The NDAA authorizes the money to be spent on these military issues in defense. We call it defense. Every year that's funded. Every year there are also all kinds of amendments and riders that are attempted to be attached to that, having to do with militarization and the military. So this year, one of the things that, and in fact in this month, one of the things that the FCNL is advocating is to put some pressure on Congress when they do this to add riders or add amendments to this that once again prevent the United States from going to war with Iran or basically anybody else without congressional approval. And that goes back to that AUMF, the authorization of force that was passed right after 9/11, giving the president authority to basically declare war without Congress. At that time, that was a fairly narrow thing, supposed to be aimed at terrorists. And then every president since then has expanded those powers, including Obama, and it looks like we're doing that now. So we're asking basically Congress to take back its powers to declare war. This is from Article 1 in the Constitution. There are issues in there that if it's an attack, the immediate attack, the president can take action. But if it's not, then they are supposed to go through Congress. So we're trying to get Congress to take back its authority to declare war. In this case, we would like to see that attached to the NDAA this month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's pretty important because one of the big issues this year is to prevent any war with Iran or prevent endless wars in general.
Right, yes.
Endless wars, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Valerie, on I did find that it's House Act 1714, HR 1714, is called the Stop Militarizing Law Enforcement Act.
okay.
And it would stop military hardware from flowing into the hands of civilian law enforcement by ending the 1033 program, which was the program that sends all of this material to, Kevlar helmets and Kevlar bulletproof, all this stuff to the, and I mean, I keep going back to, I think I mentioned to some of you earlier today when we were talking before the show began, is that I have a slideshow that I've done at other conferences and things, and it shows pictures of both Ferguson, Missouri, and the Israeli invasion of Gaza, and so it's 2 pictures. There's 20 pictures in total, 2 pictures on each page, and it's a running slideshow that changes every few seconds. And the question for the audience is, which one is the Israelis and which one is us?
Yeah.
Because it's the same equipment, right? We supply that equipment to the Israelis also.
Well, we need change. I think we can all agree here that we need to change the way we do things, and there's a lot of protests happening right now, and we do honor the life of George Floyd, and it's very sad that that happened, and now we're seeing such reactions. But war is a terrible thing. I myself have worked with refugees, and there's, the latest UNHCR number was 80 1.2 million people are displaced on the planet right now, and nobody's really caring for them. So ending endless wars is a really important issue. And I like this Friends committee, the FCNL, that's been building programs to empower grassroots advocacy in order to foster congressional champions for peace and justice. And if any of our audience is interested, you can join our team, the Helena FCNL Advocacy Team at gmail.com. And if you're interested in just getting some information, fcnl.org is the website, and it's a very informative website, and there are weekly action items. Please get in touch with us, and we can, if you're interested, we can help you get the training so that you can join in on some of the wonderful conversations that happen every week, that puts you right in Washington, right in the chambers, to hear what the vote is about and who votes for what and what they're voting about. It's a really excellent organization, and I hope that you'll look it up and join us. So thank you, Tom Butts, and thank you, Jim Smith, for telling us about FCNL.
Thank you, Donna.
Thanks, Valerie.
Thanks from Everybody's Business.